I want you to think about something. You come out of a meeting and you feel like you're pretty clear about what was decided, and you walk away and you're feeling like it was collaborative, it was really good. And then there's a follow up, and it doesn't seem like it was exactly what you remembered. It was a little bit more. Well, you hadn't quite committed to all of that. And you think, oh, maybe I'm just missing it. Maybe I'm remembering wrong. I must be. How often has that happened to you and you've just brushed it away quietly? Scope creep is more subtle than you might think, and you're setting a precedent that you might not want to. Welcome to How to Get What You Want. This podcast is for driven women ready to claim their goals and navigate their careers with clarity and confidence. Join me as we explore real stories, tools, and strategies to help you steer your career exactly where you want to go. Let's get started on helping you get what you want. Welcome. I am so glad that you made the choice to be here today, because the topic today is something that I find that people don't often identify. I certainly didn't, but it's all about scope creep. And when I talked about that in the preview, to get you to think about when you leave a meeting or when you make an agreement with somebody, are you really, really clear about what those expectations are? And when you're not, do you take the responsibility and sometimes the extra work? We might not realize that this happens more often than we want to admit. And it's so funny because we do put it on ourselves. We do imagine that, oh my gosh, I must be amiss. And this might be something that is invisible in your clear sight, right? It's something that's happening to you, but you're not even recognizing that it might be happening. So I want you to start looking for this. And why it's so important to get what you want is adding those things little by little, allowing somebody to just add the scope creep. And I don't mean that they're intentionally doing it, but that's inhibiting you from getting what you want. It's not what you want. And that's why this is a negotiation, because in that moment when you realize that the scope has shifted a little and you make a rationalization for it, or you say, I must not have remembered right there, you're negotiating with yourself. You're doubting your memory. And there's some truth to that, but understanding this so that you don't allow it to happen to you unless you intend it to happen to you is so important. And that's just what it is, adopting a negotiator mindset. That's what this is. Getting what you want is being in those moments to have this awareness. And some of the things I talk about here are just that. I want you to give you scenarios that I see in my clients, that I see in my past, that I want you to learn from. And you might not even have thought of this before. And you know what's really interesting is I did look up research around this today, because I wanted to give you some insight so you don't feel alone. But the one thing is, there is a bias to people that add on and think differently. When we're in a negotiation, and this could be a meeting, this could be a collaboration, when we're going back and forth with somebody else, our memory is not quite completely locked in to all the details. We may believe it is, but we are not completely locked in. And when we remember back, a lot of times we remember in our favor. In our favor. So some of these people that are doing this, they may not be being manipulative. They might have been thinking about the meeting and were going beyond it, and they realized there was something else that didn't come up, but they just realized. And so when they went back to think about or come back and tell you, let's move forward and do this, they're doing it from the perspective of revisionist history. They are remembering it differently than really what was said in that moment. So I just want to leave that with you to really think about that. But having said that, I want you to think about this. It happens once and it's a quirk, but when it happens multiple times, that's a pattern. And we might just get sucked into that. It might just become something that we accept and we start to do. And then that rule of reciprocity is off balance. And so that person just comes to recognize that they can get away with it. It may, again, not be conscious, but they might be doing that. So it's important to think about when that happens to get that clarity around it. I'm going to give you some tips today, but it's really important. And additional research about this is it's not just a quirk. When it does happen more than once, that's when trust erodes. That's when people don't really want to work together. And because it's not always conscious of why, we aren't able to label it so that we can make that adjustment in the moment to call that person on the carpet to say, not in a bad way, but you say, hey, listen, when we met, we agreed to A, B, and C, but now we're talking D, E, and F. But we don't do that. We just sit in silence. So I want you to be watching for this and thinking about it. And you won't be surprised to hear that this comes from personal experience. I used to have a colleague, and I'll call him maybe Dan. If you've been with me for a while, you know that's a little bit of a joke because Dan was a colleague that did this. He did this. And it took me a while to spot it, to be completely honest. But what I started to notice is we would leave meetings and I would remember something like the incentive that we were giving to both of our teams as something a little different than what he did. So my team would get ABC and his would get ABCD. And then he'd be like, that's what we talked about. Or what we were going to go to our boss and say. And we had agreed to, we were going to frame it this way and we were going to do it together. But then he happened to have a conversation with our boss before me, and he just covered it for both of us. These things of this agreement that we made, see how those are, they're a scope creep to what was agreed upon. And so I learned the hard way. I started seeing those patterns, and then I started calling him on it. And it wasn't always uncomfortable. And I'll tell you, he didn't really like it. And I'll tell you, actually, this is really true. And it's crazy to think about this. One time I was there late at night with Dan and we were talking. We had gone through battles of months of, locking heads and really not getting along. And I remember he said to me, one of my tactics that I use on people is intimidation. And it didn't work on you. And that just blows me away. So sometimes the scope creep is intentional. And I'm not saying that Dan is a bad guy, but the fact that he could say that out loud was super interesting to me. And I wanted to say that because while scope creep and like the agreement kind of getting expanded may be something that just happens, it becomes a habit on both sides. Whether you accept it and you just take it as it is, or if you expand it and it works, why not try it again? In negotiations that I've been in, I see this happening all the time. People see what's working, whether it's using emotion, whether it's assuming and seeing what you can get away with, happens all the time. So don't let it happen to you. So let me give you a couple tips that I used that I think are key. And I use these with my clients too, because, and it may sound very basic, but it's really important to do. So the first thing is to know your patterns. Start to observe yourself. I say this a lot. I mean, the evidence comes from being an observer of what you're doing. What are the things that you're accepting? You might be saying yes before it's even given to you. I was in a workshop one time and I was talking about silence and practicing silence in your day-to-day. And this woman came back in after the break and she's like, can I share? Can I share? I was just on a call and I lead this call. And every week we have to-dos. Today I practice silence. And today was the first time I didn't have a to-do after the meeting. So changing your patterns, being an observer of what you're doing, she didn't even realize. The reason that she was getting all of the to-dos in the meeting that she was leading was because she would jump in because she was uncomfortable with silence. So what are your patterns? When is this showing up for you? It's not a character flaw. We just get used to the way we run meetings or the people we work with. And so note that in real time. The second tip is to say it out loud before you leave the room. And what I mean is when you agree to something, negotiators do this really well, is you state exactly what you agreed to. We agreed to today, just to recap, I said I would do X, you said you do Y, and this is what we're gonna do, and we're not gonna do it without one another. And that just solidifies that. It puts it kind of quote unquote in writing, and it says it out loud. It's kind of putting them on notice that you are that intentional. And if you don't really trust the other person, I'd write that down right after so that you don't have revisionist history, so you don't doubt yourself. But saying that is so powerful. And most negotiations are riddled with bad communication. And that's one of the things, is to just at the end say the agreement. So just think about it. When you go from meeting to meeting, so many times we just fill those moments. Start to make your pattern that 5 minutes before the meeting's end, let's just say, let's stop discussion now. Let's just go back to what we agreed to, and make sure you state that for the room. That's really good. Also, something you can easily do is say, hey, just so that we all know the specifics of what we agreed to, I'm just going to send a quick email. So easy now with AI. You can just put the transcript in and just say those and just do it really quickly, but send that to the other person. And do it and frame it like, hey, I'm helping both of us by memorializing this for two of us. I did that every single time there was a negotiation. And I'll tell you what, more often than not, I appreciated having that. So I could look back and remember and read through before the next time I met with that person. And that just helped me to remember the nuances of the deal. And then the last one is to name it when it happens. To say to them, I remember it differently. I remember when we met on Monday and we sat in the room, and I even said it at the end that I was going to do this and you were going to do this. Why did you end up going to our boss and doing it without me? I wish you would have done it with me, because that's what we agreed to. And it's fine this time, but let's make sure that we're in alignment in the future. See, I didn't blame them. I didn't say, I'm assuming you're going to do it again, but I called them on the carpet. And I said, I recognize that this happened. I'm not going to tolerate it in the future. And we had an agreement between the two of us. So it doesn't have to be confrontational. It just has to be real and honest. I had to learn the hard way, and I see this happen a lot. And I think we also get really tied up in this culture of, oh, how are you? I'm busy. And we just accept that as the way it is until we just move so fast. But sometimes you need to take the time to make sure you tie up the loose ends. Make sure there's clarity between the two of you. Make sure there's clarity for you, and memorialize and call on the carpet when something happens that isn't aligned to what was agreed. And you know what? When that happens, they don't do it again, because they know that you're watching, and that's okay. That's okay. Let them do it to somebody else. That's okay. So I want you to think about this in the next 72 hours. Research shows that if you don't take action, then everything you've listened to in the last 10 plus minutes just goes away. Don't let it fly away. Start to pay attention to this. So I want you to think about, in a meeting that's coming up for you in the next 3 days, what was agreed to, and take a moment intentionally, a few minutes before the meeting's over, and just say, let's get really clear on this. I'm going to repeat what we agreed to and hear them back. Do you agree? Is that what we agreed to? Am I remembering that right? So try it. Start to know that and make that alignment check for you. But also, it's respectful of the relationship as well. I'm so glad that you made the choice to be here today, because these moments of thinking about getting what you want don't happen in the moments of always asking for more money or getting that promotion. It's making sure that in your day-to-day life, you're considering the times that you are accepting things that are above and beyond what you want to do, what's a part of your role. And I don't want that for you. I want you to have that awareness. I want to open up that lens of having a negotiator mindset, because that unlocks this dimension that no other people see. If you believe it's there, it is. And I'll tell you what, the reason I started on this road is I saw that so many people didn't have those glasses, those negotiator mindset glasses, and I want you to have it. If you know somebody that needs to take this advice, feel free to forward this to them. I think it's so important to share wisdom that landed with you, if this landed with you. And I don't want you to forget that negotiation is so much more than a skill and a strategy. It's a mindset. It's a dimension that other people don't see. And I want you to see it. I'm Susie. I'm glad you were here. Until next time, I'll see you then.